All right. Good evening, everyone. Just a quick intro for myself and the company as well, just for the benefit of those who, who are not familiar with what we do or what we stand for. So my name is Akin Oladeji, and I happen to be the founder of Learn with Pride. And Learn with Pride is an IT training organization based in the UK, and our sole purpose is to help people that wants to transition from a non-technical background into the IT sector. So we run different IT trainings ranging from project management to business analysis to data analysis, software testing, database administrator, and also this summer we are running an AI training for the kids between the ages of 13 and 19 as well. So that's what we do. All our trainings are practical trainings, hands-on training, and also our student gets to work on a project as well, just to cement, what they've learned during the class. Right. So this session, we do have them sometimes once in a month, sometimes twice a month. And the sole purpose of this kind of a session is to, share more information as, you know, in regards to what is happening out there. Because we believe a tiny information that you might get from this kind of a session can have a massive impact either on your application or at the interview. So we run these different sessions, sometimes talking about CV, sometimes bringing ex-students to share their testimonies, you know, different sessions just that, so that you can be equipped with the necessary skills, necessary information, tools and all of that that is required for you to, go out there and excel. So today is one of the most important, days of all the sessions. The reason for that is many of us, when applying for jobs, we always come to that roadblock of not getting passed through the HR, and many a times we wonder, what have we done wrong? Or have I said something wrong? Or I didn't say enough? You know, sometimes you get feedback, sometimes you don't get feedback, and that gets some of us worried that, oh, I didn't I get feedback. Maybe I will improve on my next interview. So today is the opportunity for us to be able to ask all those burning questions, all those why questions, because the person that we have in our midst today has been working in the industry for over 5 years, and she has worked in different sectors when it comes to HR. At the moment, she's currently the group COO, people and transformation in one of the top banking industry in the UK. So please, if you need to have your jotter, please do have your jotter. If you need to pen something down, please pen something down. But because, you know, this information you're going to get here, some people pay for those kind of information. So please don't take any information from today's session. Do not take it for granted. Please, please, and please. You know. So, without wasting further time, let me invite Timisan. Once again, thanks for honoring our invite and thanks for being here as well. I'm going to be sharing. Okay, one second. Let me share your slide. All right, one sec.
Whilst Atkins doing that, I will just give a brief hello. So as he mentioned, I've worked in the HR space for, it's actually probably coming up to 15 years now, so it's quite a long time. And one of the things that I think is important is about understanding the system and how it works. So sorry, hopefully you can all hear me okay, by the way, before I continue.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So yeah, so is the screen, is it sharing or?
Yes, it is sharing. Can you see my screen?
I can't see it, but I've got no, I can might be able to navigate it from somewhere else. I don't think I can see it from here. Let me just double check.
Let me confirm again. If you can see my screen, please drop one on the chat. If you can see my screen right now, please drop one on the chat. Yes, they can see my screen.
Right, okay. So yes, so basically what we're going to do is to discuss about how you can navigate your career from CV to a professional. And as I said, I've worked in the HR profession for over 15 years. And one of the things that I will say is that it is constantly evolving. And as part of what we will discuss will be about some of those key steps that you will go through as part of your career journey. Um, but as I said, I think for me, it is just making sure that if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask as well, or drop them in the chat. It's probably the easiest thing to say. But what I would say is that I've learned a lot along the way, and it doesn't matter, what happens. It's always about what you're learning and how you can apply that. So I guess going to the third slide, which is around tips on how to impress recruiters and getting noticed. So for me, I have basically, I can't tell you how many CVs that I've reviewed in my HR career. It's probably thousands. And one of the things that I will say is that recruiters do not have the luxury of time. It's a very competitive market out there. And so it will be about how you can highlight those key areas of your CV that you would like to highlight. So it's really about thinking about the skills and your achievements, also about customizing your CV to make sure that it aligns well to the actual job itself. There is a diagram which has a picture of a CV there, and what you'll see is that in the format, what they've done is that they have highlighted, for example, their summary of their career, so it's quite clear to the individual reading it or the recruiter. They've gone through their core competencies, and what they've done is that they've highlighted some key stats around things that they've been able to achieve as part of their career journey. So again, think about it in the context. There are many people applying for roles, and it's how is your CV going to jump out at the recruiter and get your CV to the top of the pile. So it is about, as I said, customizing, making it succinct and to the point. And as I said, they just don't actually have all of that time. Moving on to the next slide around some of the useful tips. So it's really about show the results, as I said, not just the duties. So if you, for example, have been able to create some type of profitable something profitable for the organization, and these are the things that again recruiters and organizations would like to hear. So how have you increased sales, or what any programs that you've created, how has that impacted the organization in some way where it has created extra revenue for the business? Start using those actionable verbs. So for example, you do need to highlight things like where have you led? So if you've led things, highlight that. Talk about what you've created or streamlined or implemented. Again, these are things that are quite key buzzwords that a recruiter would like to hear. And again, it's how it's setting you apart from everybody else, because those keywords there will pretty much home into them and explain to them, hopefully, that you are able to lead a team or a project, and where you've either streamlined things from a cost efficiency perspective. So they're all really key bits of information that do need to come through as part of the actual CV as well. Professional formatting. So again, very important. one of the things that I would say, where you've got a very, let's say if you've got quite a lot of experience, even though I've worked in HR for coming up to 15 years now, I've also done other careers prior to that. So from when I graduated from university, but I wouldn't necessarily include all of those bits of information on my CV. Try and keep it succinct again and to the point. 1 to 2 pages if you can, but if it does bleed into 3 pages, that's okay, provided the information is relevant to the recruiter and actually what they're looking for. Bear with me, I've lost my bit there. So the next bit would be about I've said about saving it. If you can save it to a PDF, do, just so that it avoids any of the formats being changed, but highlights any soft and hard skills as well. So if you can do that, so making sure that you've got that balance between soft skills and your technical skills, and where possible, maybe add that personal touch. So mention any certifications, any languages that you speak, any volunteering experience that is relevant to the actual role itself. So things not to include, which is on the next slide. What I've said here is the things that generally organisations do not want to see are things like, or what I should say, the things that I would recommend that you don't include in your CV is things like your age, your date of birth, just because discrimination can play out in these processes, which is sad to say, but it's true. We shouldn't be discriminating against anyone, but sometimes if you do give that information, it homes in and it may be bringing a particular view on someone's age or capability to do a role, when you shouldn't be looking at that. You should be looking at their skill set. Marital status, no need to put that in there as well. That is classed as personal information, and that shouldn't really affect your ability to do the job. Place of birth, again, not an important or relevant bit of information to add. It has nothing to do with your qualifications or anything like that. And don't have anything like your full address, not needed as part of the CV. Also thinking about your safety as well. I think it's one of these things that we recommend not to have on your CV. You could probably put the town or the country, which is fine. And I have seen a lot of CVs where they do have photos. So I would probably not recommend that as well. Standard CVs that I've come across tend to be just quite straightforward and plain and simple. And again, you want to remove as much bias as possible. So I would recommend not putting any pictures on there. People should be looking at your skills and your experience. Religious or political affiliations, don't want to have that. And work-related information where, for example, you might want to avoid talking about salary, or again, hobbies or interests that are not relevant to the job. Your CV is really something where you want it to be as robust, as I said, succinct, and as appealing to the organisation as possible. And you want it to be filled with rich information about yourself, but not information that can detract or build a picture of you that they might think is the case, and it's not. So moving on to the next slide, and that will be around how to make your cover letter stand out. Now, this is an interesting debate about cover letters. I am actually a fan of them if they're succinct again and to the point. And what I tend to do is that I tend to build my cover letter in with the CV. So I would put the cover letter in the front page, and then I would have the CV follow. So that it's just one document, and it's literally something where it gives a really nice overview and summary of who you are as a person. And it's almost like warming up the recruiter and the hiring manager about who you are as a person. So I would recommend doing a cover letter of some sort. And what you would like to do, what you should have within the cover letter, it should be around addressing, you could address the individual with a very general greeting, or if you do happen to know the hiring manager's name, you can obviously say that as well. You want to start with a really strong opening line. So, why you're excited about the role, or what piques your interest, and something impressive about the organisation. You can also start to tell a bit of a story about who you are as well. So these are the things that you wouldn't necessarily find in the CV itself, but the cover letter can give the recruiter and the hiring manager a bit of a snapshot into who you are as a person as part of the actual cover letter. So try and use brief paragraphs and highlight relevant accomplishments and any challenges that you've overcome. And again, try to make it personal or professional. Showing your passion is something that is going to be quite key, and mentioning something specific about the company that you really enjoy or that you like. You can close the actual cover letter with confidence. So reaffirm your value in, again, the organisation, and end with a call to action. So I look forward to the opportunity to speak further. So again, that is letting the recruiter know that you're very keen, and you're looking forward for them to touch base with you. On the next slide, which is around the cover letter example, yes, I think you can get a copy of the slide at the end. I think I saw that there. As you look at the cover letter, here's an example here, which I've put. And so what you'll see is that you will have, I guess there's three areas to it. So you'll have the opening paragraph, the middle paragraph, and the closing. So for example, I won't read it verbatim, but it just basically says, so dear hiring manager, you obviously put the name in there. I'm writing to express my strong interest in the job, which you'll say it could be, I don't know, a project manager at the company as advertised. And you would say, as I said, I was particularly drawn to this company's innovation and its approach and how it does things. And then start homing in on why you think your skills and experience are relevant for the job itself. So again, selling yourself. And then you can talk a bit about your skills and experience. So the middle bit of the paragraph, you would say, in my previous roles at X, I was responsible for, leading a team, and try and attach that as much as possible to the job in question. So again, making the recruiter and the hiring manager see why your skills are experienced. I'll get to the end of this slide, and then I will take that. I can see a hand, and so we can definitely answer that question. And then closing. So thank you for considering my application. Eager to learn more about the opportunity and discuss how my skills and experience can benefit. So again, just not nice enough, just giving them a bit of an insight to yourself. So I'll stop there. There is a question. Is it Newell? Did you want to come off mute and ask the question?
Hello.
Hi there.
Yeah, I have one question about there's a slide before this one, the one that has no, the number five. Yeah, the irrelevant job experience. So my question is, how would one skip that from the CV? Because one, we end up creating a gap. So what I usually do, I don't know if it's right or wrong based on what I'm seeing now. What I usually do is I write my work is where I'm working, for example, my current company, and then the one that is not relevant, I just write the company name, but I don't put any detail, just company name from this date to that date, and then there's no other information like bullet points of what I do there. I don't know if that is correct, because that's what I
That's
was.
that is fine as well. So, for example, on my CV, I don't have, any of my roles that I did probably in my 20s is not in there, just because they're not relevant. After I graduated from university, I did a range of jobs that were not connected to HR. So what I have done is maybe in the latter years, let's say where I was at the earlier stages of my HR journey, I wouldn't necessarily go into, again, a lot of detail, but similar to what you said, I would maybe put like a line and put the company and just maybe have 1 or 2 bullet points. But as you get further up to the more recent, more relevant roles where you can really pull out that's those skills and experience,
Yes.
that is probably where I would beef out your CV the most. Because by the time this recruiter's got to page 1, they've got to get on to the next CV. So just think about, you want to basically put as much, you want to load your CV up at the front with all of the relevant information at the beginning. And, I'm not saying that you shouldn't add anything, as part of your career history, if that's what it's there for, but I would be very mindful about putting things that are irrelevant. And as I said, it goes back to thinking about, you are one of hundreds of thousands of people that are applying for jobs. They just do not have the time to go through them one by one in the level of detail that you're thinking.
Okay. Thank you.
No
All right,
problem.
thanks, Noel. Do you want to continue or you want to take the next one now or later?
Oh, was there another question? Yeah, sure. I can take the next question.
All right, Oluwasegun, you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. So my question is under the first, I think the sixth, the slide where you have, I think the eighth one, the cover letter, yes.
Yes.
So the opening part, I just want to understand. You said if we are starting the opening letter, we start with their hiring manager's name. That's if applicable, if we have the name of the hiring manager. So in the case where I don't have access to the name of who the hiring manager is, can I just leave it as, because what I usually do is I just leave it as their hiring manager and that's it. And I
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you can put to whom it may concern. You can put dear hiring manager or to whom it may concern. Like, if you do have the information, more personable, but if you don't, you can make it more general. So, as you said, to the hiring manager or to whom it may concern, like,
Okay.
that could be something you can do.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Thanks, Segun.
I can take another question. Is it Pat?
All right, Pat, you can quickly ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. Good evening. The question is around the cover letter. So after the middle paragraph where you've highlighted your skills and experience, because there are some job descriptions, you look at them and it's myriad of requirements. You see a lot of requirements for the job. How do you prioritize? How do you know which skill to hammer on to make an impression, or you just have to? Because sometimes I end up writing something about everything and it's just a lot. I like, do they really take their time to look through these things? It goes into 2 or 3 pages, or then when you try to summarize it, you're thinking, oh, you're trying to just give them surface information and probably so I get stuck sometimes, like, what do I press on?
So again, going back to my first point, remember, you are one of many candidates. So you've got to think about how can you be succinct and to the point, knowing that there are hundreds of other applications that are also going through the recruiter's, line of vision. So I would definitely think about 3 key things that you've seen in the advertisement that you want to pull together as part of your key skills that you want to raise, or some of the key things that, you would like to highlight as part of your skills and experience, and connect it to one of the points within the role description. 3 things maximum. Your cover letter shouldn't be more than half a page. You know, at a push, maybe 3/4 of a page. Once you're getting into essays, it's too long. So you have to literally be quite strict. And if it makes it easier for you, you know, if you want to print it off and get a highlighter and just think these are the key things that I really want to home out, and I can actually explain my experience and say this is how my skills and experience are relevant to that, then I would do that. As I said, it's what I would say, the cover letter is literally tantalizing the recruiter's taste buds into who you are as a person. You need to keep some bits behind so that, you know, you're keeping them interested, but you're not getting them, you know, losing interest because there's just too much information that you put in there.
All
So
right, thanks for that. Do you want to continue and answer the next one later on?
yes, of course, I can continue because there's a few more
All
slides
right,
to go through.
all right, cool.
So yeah, I'll try and go through because I know we've got quite a few, but I will skip through some if I don't feel that they're relevant. So once we've got to the point of you have your CV successful, the recruiter likes what they see, the hiring manager's just like, yep, let's just bring this person in for an interview. You know, preparing for the interview is really key. It will set you up for success, and it will also set you apart from other people that are interviewing for the role as well. So definitely, some of you, I'm sure you are doing this, and it might be information that you already know, but having a bit of research about a company is useful. Understanding the market that you're working in, so that even when you get to the end of the interview and you're asking questions, it's relevant and it shows that you have a broader understanding. You're not just going for the job, but you are making connections to what's happening within the market, some transformation. So, you know, as Akin said, I work for a FTSE 100 bank, and you know, they have had a lot of things happening. And so if I was coming in now, I would make sure that I'm really well versed in what's happening and what their position is. So it tells the hiring manager that, you know, you've got more to you than just the actual job itself. You are thinking more long term and a career. So review the job description, again, noting your skills and experience. And if you do get information, 9 times out of 10, you are given the names of the person that is interviewing you. I normally like to research them on LinkedIn. So I like to find out where they've worked. I like to just get a feeling of their background, so you kind of know what you're stepping into, because everyone has very varied careers. And you might even find some commonality sometimes when you have done a bit of research in them that you can bring to the actual interview and discuss with them. Where possible, prepare answers. So there will be some standard answers or questions that you will get asked in an interview. And some of them might be related to around, you know, why you were interested in the role. That tends to come up quite a lot. And there can be some questions, particularly around, let's say, for example, you know, if the role is managing a team of people, then you need to think about maybe examples where you've led a team really well, or think about some of the challenges that you faced when managing a team, or anything like that. It's just trying to basically give as much insight as possible. And continuing on how to prepare for your interview, as I said, common questions. The STAR model is really good. It's a really simple but effective tool to use in your interview, and it always keeps people on track. So when I've interviewed many people, I'm thinking about, I want to understand this. If I'm asking them a question, I want to understand what the situation was. I need to then think about the tasks that they've had to think through as part of the situation. It could be that they had a project that they had to deliver within a short space of time. So I then you know, I would then think the individual then needs to come back about, they need to show me that they're thinking about all of the different tasks that they had to think about before they can deliver this project. And then you want to think about actions that you have taken. So if you've taken any actions to drive a certain outcome, what were they? And again, highlighting that as part of your answer. And then the last bit is around the result. What was the end result off the back of you know, this project? And it keeps your answers very succinct and to the point, and it allows the recruiter or the hiring manager in this instance to, most times you'll be awarded points based on the depth of your answer. And the ones that get the highest points are the ones that are able to show that full end-to-end situation, the task, the action, and the result, what you took. So that will be really important. So, and also what I've said is, yeah, again, if you can demonstrate where possible, if you've got any stats, that's really good. I have people that, again, I'll interview and they would say, oh, I've created this really great, again, program, and it was wonderful. And then I would say to them, okay, so what change or what impact did that have to the business? Did you, what's, you know, and can you pull any data and show, well, at the start of the project, we were at X amount, and by the end of it, we were at this. So have some numbers to hand in your back pocket, which would be quite useful, and rehearse. So I tend to speak out loud, try and, like, you know, get into the mode of, this is how the conversation could potentially go. I feel therefore a bit more comfortable and am able to answer the questions as and when they're asked. The last few points, so preparing questions, again, really useful. If you've done your research, you should be pointing questions back at the organisation and asking them about the team structure. Why has the role been open for so long, if that's the case? What are the key priorities for the organisation or the department over the next few months? What do they enjoy about working at the company? So again, it sounds like you're a bit more engaged in that. And then, yeah, as I mentioned before, doing research about you know, the company and the future plans and team dynamics, which again is, they're really important things, because as much as you want to get a job, you want to get a job in a place that you can actually thrive in, and that's really important. So again, I'll stop there. I think it's just easier to ask questions as and when they come through. So I think we've got, I don't have the name, it just says Dell Computer.
Yeah, Dell, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Dell, I don't know if you...
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate that. Please, my question is that for a job role that so many applicants are putting for, so I want to know, what's the priority? How does an interviewer assess those questions? I mean, when an interview that is being held for like over 1,000 people, do they take that time to read CV to CV, or AI have been implemented to, you know, to implement and enhance that particular task?
So I think what you were saying, sorry, about the fact that there's a lot of applications, and what are you trying to say at the last point? There's a lot of CVs that have come through, and did you want to just reconfirm what you were saying towards the end? But if it is
Yeah, hold on. Okay, 1 second. Dell, do you want to unmute yourself again and react to your question?
Yes, what I mean is this: for a job opening that thousands of people have applied to,
yes.
and how do they know shortlist individuals that are going to be called for an interview? Did the interviewer take their time to read from CV to CV, or AI tools have been implemented to help manage situation like that?
So I think, answering your first part of the question, if, for example, a company has had over 1,000 CVs, if I'm being totally honest, if they can go through the first 25, or okay, that's probably a low number. Let's say if they go through the first 100, and those 100, the first 100 that they've seen is enough for them to get through. It's very hard, and this is why the market is very competitive. And I will probably go into, I'll explain something else as well. It's not just about applying for jobs, it is about your network too, if you can build that or if you can connect with people. Because I think, particularly in this market at the moment where there are a lot of people looking for roles, there is a possibility that you could do your application and you're not successful just because of the volume of people that have applied for a role. So what recruiters tend to do is that they will go through the first trench. If they've got enough people that kind of hit the criteria, then they will take those people through to the next stage. And then as part of that, we will then look at your CV in more detail and look at your profile against a number of different criteria. And if, for example, that person is hitting criteria, then you then progress to the interview. So I think to say that in most cases, unless the job is very, let's say, very unique, where you won't get a lot of applications coming through. And when I say not a lot, I mean like a decent amount of applications. But where you've got jobs that are, most people apply for it. I'll give an example. Customer service, as an example, is a job that you might get loads of applications coming in just because the skill set is quite broad in terms of what you could do. So you might find a lot of people apply. But for a very specialist niche role, might not be as many people. So it's very different. But I would say, yes, I would just say basically it can be very competitive. And so I always say to give yourself a chance, it's about applying for more than one role. I say to people, try and apply for a good few to increase your chances.
Thanks for that. Do you want to continue or take a couple more questions before you continue?
I could probably take maybe one or two just to.
All right. Chinemeram, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, so I remember you were saying something about writing your previous experience and stuff like that. So my question is this: what if I lack professional, work experience for an advertised role? What sections of my CV should I prioritize? I mean, what kind of information should I, include in my CV since, my previous experiences does not really align to the job I'm actually applying for.
So I think there's two ways to look at it. There can be technical experience, which is hard sometimes, and there can be transferable skills. And I think there are a lot of things that you do day in, day out that are transferable in a lot of jobs. And if, for example, the technical skills aren't something that you've been able to apply, you can always talk about how you've been able to learn those practices either through a course or things that you've been doing independently. You can still highlight those things. You don't always have to be assigned to an organization. There could be volunteering that people are doing. So there are different avenues to highlight your experience, but making sure that there are, some transferable skills that you could highlight that are, regardless of your technical capability, you could apply that in any job.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem.
All right. Do you want to take one more or later on?
Let me power through some more slides because we've still got a few more to go through, and I'll answer some more questions. I'll just quickly go through these last little bits, but as I said, when you get to the interview stage, it is about listening really carefully about what the hiring manager is saying about the role and what they're looking for, making notes whilst they're talking, and showing them that, you've been listening by repeating certain things. Being yourself is really important. staying positive, I've put and avoiding any type of negativity. So sometimes, let's say if you've left an organization and it's not been the best experience, I would avoid talking about that in an interview because it's just one thing that generally the new employer doesn't really take favorably to. Unless somebody specifically is really probing in a space, then maybe you can allude to something where it just wasn't the right fit for you. That's my kind of standard line. But I wouldn't go into any type of bashing of any individuals, so I would avoid that. So moving on to the next slide about, you know, sometimes we don't get the role, and I could tell you in my career, there's so many jobs that I've applied for and I didn't get them, and that is okay. Things happen for a reason. Sometimes I find that it puts more strings to your bow as well, and it's also it basically, yeah, I think it does make you stronger sometimes. It can be difficult, but I am a believer that what's chosen for you is meant to be, and sometimes certain opportunities are not meant to be for whatever reason. So we'll just quickly cover something about how to navigate not being offered the role. So as I said, sometimes things don't go your way, and that is okay. That's totally fine. And you can acknowledge your emotions. You can be sad, you can be upset. Again, totally fine. But I always tell people to have their moment and try and move on as quickly as possible so it doesn't drag you down. And seek feedback. So again, some organisations can give feedback if you've gone to an interview, which I think is the right practice to do. And especially if you're applying for a role internally, I think it's even more so organizations need to be doing that. If you're in a role already in an organization and you want to get feedback, I would request that to understand where it is that you potentially might have fallen down in the interview process, what the hiring manager is looking for. If it's an external role, and they are able to give you a few bullet points, then great. But sometimes they don't. And again, if they don't, that's fine. I always say when applying to jobs, it's a numbers game. So yes. Again, what I might say is that for anyone that has put a question, if we've got time, we'll try and read a few of them out at the end. So we'll try and get back to some of the people that have asked questions in the chat. But so I would say if you don't get the job, it's okay. Think about, as I said, how other ways that you can learn and grow in that time frame of you looking for your dream job. Use the experience and learning opportunity to enhance your skill sets. I'm a big fan of attending webinars or going to networking events or connecting with people, because sometimes we don't always naturally have those networks. But I think it's important sometimes to, I guess, create those opportunities for yourself where possible, even if you don't naturally have those networks. And it's a good way to fill your time as you're navigating your career. So moving on to, I guess, let's say you've gone through all of that, you now have landed your dream job, or a job that you really like. And so there are a few things that I said that will be useful to know. One of the key things that I think the biggest thing that I've learned in this game of my career is that relationships are extremely important. Most people progress in organizations not because of their technical capability, but it is because of how they can connect with other people across the organization. And I will go into more detail afterwards about thinking about once you've got the job, who those key people should be. But it is about, it's firstly about doing your job really well. That's fundamental. Again, it's a very competitive market, and particularly if people are from underrepresented groups, you have to be like nailing your job. And if you're not nailing your job and then looking for promotions, it's highly unlikely. But if you've got that ability to technically nail your job, then fine. But it's also about networking internally, building that rapport with colleagues across different departments. I work in a HR function, but it's massive. I don't know everyone, but I try and book in meetings with people face to face if I can, and it's very informal, but it does help form those relationships. Networking externally as well, as I mentioned. You've got things like Eventbrite or anything where LinkedIn, you might see, for example, events that are taking place. You can try and do any of those. That'd be really good. And seeking mentorship whilst in the role. So, even if you started the role, you can ask the question about having a mentor. It doesn't have to be somebody super senior either. It could be somebody that is same level as you in the role, or that's been in the role for a very long time, but they're at least giving you those advice, that tools and tips as well. So I think that's really important. But as I said, acing your technical skills, or your kind of core bread and butter skills, is really important, and doing your job well is extremely important. And employers do respect this, and the rest will come. And if you apply all of those other skills as well, as I mentioned, around relationships, that's also a very key thing. The next slide is about the career board of directors. Now, this is a very interesting concept. It is not a physical career board of directors that you might be thinking of. It is literally people within your sphere that can be quite important in how you progress in your role. So, as I said, it's a collection of people that can help you advance your career. Unlike mentors who advise you from the sidelines, there's a typo there, but your career board of directors are able to go beyond the guidance giving. And they will basically be, some senior mentors, but it's broader than that. It is just mainly people within your organization. And as I said, the good news, it's a conceptual board of directors. It's not a physical one. So it's literally you strategically thinking about who are the key players that you need to connect with that are going to help you navigate your career. And as I said, you don't even need to tell them. You don't need to tell everyone that they're on the board, but you can literally think about, okay, look, I've got Jane over there. She's literally the woman who is responsible for promotion. So I need to get to know her. You don't need to be as direct and be like, oh, I need to be promoted, but you could book a one-to-one chat and ask about her career and how she navigated, etc., etc. You start to build up a rapport. They get to know who you are, and because they're a key decision maker, it helps. So think about those people. And I think the next slide is really, it's just a little template, and you could do that at home. You could sit there strategically mapping out, who those people are as part of your career board of directors that you need to kind of know. Is it a sponsor? Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a mentor? Do you need to get a mentor over the time? Who's your biggest cheerleader? So there might be people that just sing your praises, who's the great connector? There's people in organizations that just naturally are very good at connecting you with other people. And again, it's just who they are and having a trusted advisor. So again, these are things I like to do strategically at home sometimes, and you can then apply it in the workplace when you're actually there. But moving on to the next slide. So I said, who should your career board of directors be? So as I mentioned, they should be decision makers. So those are the people who have the final say on your pay, your promotion, and any projects that you should be doing. Influencers are people who have the ear of the decision makers and can influence the key outcomes for yourself and your career, because those people do exist. So you might have a line manager, as an example, who would be potentially one of your biggest influencers. because your manager would report into, let's say it's the group COO, then that connection is very important. And also the last point was around someone who's going to advocate for you. So that is sponsorship. And advocating for somebody is really, it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to do it when you feel very confident in that person's capabilities. So that's why it's important to make sure that you're delivering on your job and you do what you're meant to be doing, because only those people that trust in your ability to deliver will advocate for you. And if you don't deliver, then they won't. And then the last slide, which was around understanding the company culture. Now, I think this is really important. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to conform to an organization completely. That's not what I'm saying. But I do always say, understand the organization that you are working for. Get to understand your team dynamics, what they do, how they connect. And because that will help you how to navigate. And as I said, the company culture, it really encompasses the shared values, the goals, the attitudes, and the practices of the organization. So if you, for example, you work for an organization or a team where they like to do a lot of celebrations, not always going out for drinks, but let's say they might want to do team lunch, and you just are like, I don't want to do team lunch. I don't want to connect with those people. I always say I have those days as well, but sometimes you have to, roll up your sleeves, and that is sometimes how you get to know people a bit better as well. So understand the dynamics that you're working in, and as I said, the working environment is key. The structure, the management styles of people. Try and read people where you can. There are some managers, for example, who can be quite direct. They're quite results driven. And if that is how they are, then you need to know how to play to that. Equally, you could have a manager that is quite data driven. So again, how do you play into that? Or you could have a manager that's very, people orientated and they like to have a laugh and a joke. How do you play into that? So it's about understanding the people. And that's really it. And that was sorry, it's quite a few slides, but hopefully that's given you some insight. And I know there's been some questions. So I don't know how much time you've got left.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that. So, if you still have any question, you can raise your hand. But quickly before I call the people who raise their hand, let's take maybe one or two on the chat as well. 1 second. Okay, I think Pat has asked his question. Shinemara has asked his one as well. Okay, my network is very bad, so please, I'll put my question here. Please, what action can you take, or can you tackle a 4-year gap on the CV when coming back into the corporate world?
So 4 years, hopefully in that 4 years, you might have been doing something. So it doesn't necessarily have to be working, but it could be, for example, you've been supporting with, volunteering, or it could be, let's say if you're part of a church or anything like that, or you're part of a committee. I also do volunteering. I'm a school governor as well, and these are things that I think are important to highlight, the things that aren't necessarily paid work, but it could be just experience. And it's okay also to say that you've had a career break and you were traveling or you were doing all of these things. But it's also what I would say, where you have had quite a long gap, I would sometimes put the most last role or something in there to say this is what you've been doing and these are the skills that I've been able to pick up in the time frame. And then from a networking perspective, I just tell people that you really do need to get yourself out there and research about the types of things that you're interested and the potential events that are available that you could go and participate in, or webinars. And that can also build out your network as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Fumi, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question? for me.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Good afternoon. Timiso, it's really nice to hear this your talk. I'm really impressed. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Okay, my
sure.
first question is how important is essentials and desires, during when they put up this job, they have these essential requirements and there's some that is desirable. How important is it when I'm making application? Do I need to, which of it is the desire, is it important for me to also consider that when I'm making application? That's my
Yes.
first question.
Yeah, okay.
My second
So-
question is about writing personal statements. Nowadays we use we have ChatGPT writing, helping people to write, and some application they will ask you if you actually use AI to write your personal statements. Disclosure, I would say. How important is it? Must I write it myself? Can I use AI to write my statements and disclose it at the end? I mean, in the application. My third question, sorry, because I just wrote all the questions, I apologize. My third question is around STAR techniques when doing interview. So that is situation, task, action, and result. Now, when I'm responding, do I need to let them know, oh, this is the situation, this is the task, or I just incorporate it that it's up to the interviewer to determine what the situation is and what the result is? Is it up to them to determine that, or is it up to me to explain this is the situation, to explain this is the task, this is the action I've taken, and this is the result? And the last question is around feedback.
Yeah.
How, because sometimes they just say no, and they don't give you opportunity to ask for feedback. Can I press for feedback?
Okay. Right.
Thank you.
So we've got 4 questions. I'll try and power through them. Okay, so the first one about essentials and desires. So I think for me, when you see a job, the desirable bits it's just nice to have. It doesn't mean that you obviously have to have them, but they would be nice to have. The essentials, now, even if you haven't got, let's say there's 5 essential things that they're asking for and you've got 3 of them, I would still apply. Because 9 times out of 10, when you get the job, or, there are things that either people can learn quite easily. And I think providing you can give a really strong weighted answer on some of the essential skills and why these are really good, they might be slightly more weighted than others. So I would definitely make sure that, if you've got the majority of the essential skills, apply. If you don't even have any of the desirables, that's okay. They're desirables for an organization, so don't worry about that. The next question, which was around your personal statement and ChatGPT. So times are changing. People are using AI to create things, to even where I work now, there is a big push for AI, and we are using more AI generated tools to help with our work because it's more efficient. So I would say there's absolutely nothing wrong with using ChatGPT. And yes, so there's 2 things. You can be honest and say that you've used ChatGPT or whatever it is, AI, to help with your statements. But if, for example, it's given you an idea of how to write it, but you've changed it around, then technically that's your own. So, I would say where you have made numerous changes to, because ChatGPT is literally, it's a framework, it's pulling everything together, but you may not even like what it said. So you can still, adapt it. And technically, once you've adapted it, it's your version. So I would say that one. Then the third one around the interview, using STAR, completely up to you. Now, depending on how you do it, you can do it in quite a nice way that is seamless. So you could say, for example, we had a situation at work where, for example, one of our products was losing money. So that was the situation. I therefore had to then carry out a number of tasks to ascertain why this was happening. So you've mentioned task, but you haven't said task. Then you would say there were a number of different actions that had to happen. We had to set up a team to look at the tracking of the data and why there was a loss in this, etc., etc. And then the end result, we realized that it was a technical that. So you can still weave it. So what it does is that when the recruiter is writing down their notes, they can pinpoint quite easily, what that breakdown of that answer is. Or if you feel more comfortable doing it like the situation is task, action, result, then that's fine as well. But I think over time, you just find a way that works for you so that it allows them to at least understand all the components of your answer. And then the last one about feedback. So there's a couple of things I would say. If, for example, you apply for an external role and you've asked them numerous times for feedback, I would eventually and you don't get it, I would leave it alone, because that's telling you the type of organization that they are potentially, and why would you waste time? I think if they are lucky, if you ask them for feedback and they respond back straight away, then that's great. But I wouldn't be somebody who's literally bashing their door down to get feedback, because it can come across as a bit much for organizations, because in their eyes they're like, well, you just have to move on, and they don't feel obligated. Some organizations don't feel obligated to give you feedback. Some do. Some are really great at doing that, even if you're not an employee, but others don't. But that normally tells you a bit about who they are as an organization, and then you have to ask yourself, would you really want to work there? So hope I've answered all four.
Yeah, thanks for that, Temi-san. If you still have any more questions, we can take 2 or 3 more questions. You can raise your hand if you have a question, and we can take that while you're thinking about if you want to ask a question or not. There's a question on the chat, although I think directly or indirectly you've answered it. Why do some employers ghost you after an interview, not to even tell you that you were unsuccessful? Again, I think you just answered that just now. So
yeah, I think it is it's not a nice thing for them to do. It really isn't. But they are dealing with thousands and thousands of applications for numerous different roles. And so sometimes it's just very hard for them to and some organizations don't even have the manpower. It looks like a very sophisticated process when you look at the front, but when you start going into the back office operations, it can be quite lean. So I wouldn't take it too personally. That's why I always say, like, if you can try, I couldn't tell you the amount of times that I haven't had feedback, but I'm like, whatever, and I'll just move on.
thanks for that. Chinemiram, you raise your hand, you can unmute.
Okay, just a quick one. See, you are working in an organization and you've been there for like barely 3 months, and then you want to switch to another role within the same organization. Is it advisable to state, that you're working in the same organization on your CV, apply more like internally, or is it better not to declare at all and just, kind of like use something else?
So, sorry, you've been at a company for 3 months,
Yeah,
and you want to apply for another role?
yes, in the same organization. Is it advisable to state that you've been there for some time, even though,
Okay, so I mean, if you've been in an organization for 3 months and you're applying for a new role, that may kind of cause a bit of concern potentially, but because they might want to ask, you've only been in this job for like 2 minutes and you want to leave and you haven't really got yourself up to speed yet. But if there are genuine reasons why let's say at the beginning you were like, look, this is the job that I'm doing now, but when I came in, I was always really interested in doing this and it's come up and I really want to go for it. You can do that, but I think it's good to be transparent and talk to your manager about your intentions as well. I know I do caveat, every manager's different. So I'm saying that, but not everyone has that understanding boss. So you need to understand what they're like first. But maybe it might be useful to speak to the other department that you're looking to potentially go into and ask them some questions about, you know, your situation and see if they're even receptive to it, because that might help with them maybe having a conversation with your current line manager about your reasons for moving along. But generally, most people, you know, are in a role 6 months to a year, potentially. It can take up to about a year to fully assimilate into a role. It can. And, you know, and most people want to hear about what you've done in that time frame to demonstrate why you would be good for this next role that's come up. But where you've got very limited time in a previous role, you may not have as much to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
All right, thanks. No, you raise your hand. You can ask your question. No.
Hello. My question goes to my question on the 10th slide, I think it is. You talked about personalization of doing an interview. I think it was number 10.
Okay.
Yeah. The one you said, research the interviewer background, experience, potential area to personalize your conversation. So my question is this: doesn't that backfire at times?
Or in trying to find out about your
No. When you know about the interviewers and okay, let me give an example.
Yeah.
So I have a friend. He did PhD, so he did PhD on another field, so he was applying for this job. So the interviewer happened to be a PhD person as well. And during the interview, they went into PhD research and school and blah blah blah. At the end of the day, they didn't even get back to him. So because he said the school conversation was what took the whole interview, not actually the job in question. I mean, they asked him about him. He said, oh, he did this, he was a PhD student, he has finished. And then the interview went straight into PhD discussion for like 45 minutes. And after that, the interview ended and they didn't get back to him. So my question is, does this backfires when you do an interview knowing the interviewer's background and then you try to personalize the conversation?
It's a very unique example. I mean, in most scenarios, it shouldn't backfire, is number one. And also, the person that's doing the interview needs to take some accountability on how they're running that interview in the first place, because at the end of the day, they should really want to understand, even though they know them, they should want to understand about, you know, how they're faring up against the other candidates. So I think that's quite a unique scenario, but I think what I was trying to say in about understanding about who they are, it gives you an insight into potentially, you know, if they've worked at, let's say, a type of company that you're aware of or anything like that, it gives you, it potentially could give you some insight, or you might have worked at the same time, etc., etc. So there's nothing wrong in doing your background research, which I think is important. I think that says more about the person that's interviewing you if they can't manage that process in the fairest way, where they're asking balanced questions to get to know the individual. So I would just say, you know, you could definitely do your research, but it's also about knowing reading the room and knowing when to mention certain things or not to mention certain things as well.
Thanks for that. No, I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
All right, thanks. Dale, please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. My question is, what insight can you give to an individual that's aspiring, to get a job in diaspora, putting an instance of, difference in the CV format, in terms of maybe Canadian format, UK format, and the person is not used to that. What kind of insight can you please give to the person?
Insight about changing the CV format from a non-UK one to a UK one?
No, so let's take for example, the applicant is not in the UK or Canada or US. The applicant is, let's say, in Ghana, in Nigeria,
Yes.
in the diaspora.
Yes.
What advice can you give to such that wants to apply for roles abroad?
So I think, again, you need to really find out if because some companies are very open and they will employ people from overseas if they've got the right skill set. I would definitely, when it comes to the format of it, and I would try and do a bit of research about the types of formats that work well in the country that you're applying to. So if you're in another country and you know that the format that this other country is using is very different, you can have more than one CV. I always recommend people to have more than one CV. I've got about, I don't know how many I've got loads, I've got different versions. And you have to have versions and tailor that to the market that you are applying for. And, there are organizations that will, they will sponsor people from different, from around the world, providing they have the particular skill set. But 9 times out of 10, it's about what they see initially in the first instance. And if you can get some examples of CV formats, and I think I said in the presentation, something that we don't tend to do here in the UK, I've seen loads of it, but is when people have a picture of their face on there. I don't recommend it. I would go with a very clean, simple, straightforward format that is highlighting your skills and experience, particularly for countries like the UK, the US, or Canada, or anything like that. And you can do that, apply in another country, but make sure it's in the standard format that that country would prefer. So again, I'm not a fan of CVs where it's got loads of colors on it. Like, it's just, keep it very simple, is probably what I would say.
Yeah, thanks for that. Rotimi, please ask a question. Unmute yourself.
Hello, good evening. My question relates to a question that was asked. I'm not sure I got the speaker's opinion correctly about ChatGPT. I recently was applying for a job and I saw that it was stated there, if you have used ChatGPT, declare it if you have used it, and it will be asked during the interview and thereabout, I think. So I'm wondering, did she say we should declare that we use ChatGPT?
If they're asking you to declare it, and that is the case, I would declare it. But what I'm saying is more of a case of you've used ChatGPT, but you've customized it in some way where, like, it's not the original version of that. What ChatGPT might have done is that it's given you an idea, but you might not even like what they've given you. You might rewrite it completely. But if you find you're in an instance where you are using it fully and they've asked you to declare it, you should declare it, because I guess what they can do is that they could potentially search it and check to see. It's a bit like when I was at university and I did my dissertation, like, you can't obviously can't plagiarism, you can't have any of that unless you've changed it around in some way, you've got to change the wording around. So I think, to go back to your answer, if they've explicitly asked you and you have used it fully without making any changes to it, then you have to declare that you have used it.
All right. Thank you. I think that's all the questions that we do have on the chat. What's the time now? I want to finish by in 10 minutes time, the most. So if you have any question that you still want to ask, this is the opportunity to raise your hand or drop your question in the chat as well. We should be able to take one or 1.5 more if you do have. But if not, then we're just going to be rounding up.
I think there might be a question. Was it Mariam? I didn't see. I don't know if they were asking a question or.
Mariam, have you got any question? You can unmute yourself now if you have any question.
Hi, thank you for taking this question. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
we can.
All right, cool. Sorry, it was just about I had two questions, but you answered one already. I think one other person asked about you mentioned about having various CVs to tailor, different roles, which was my first question. My second question would go to the previous questions I asked earlier from the text box. Regarding the career break, if it was more like a self-employed or a holiday or whatnot, would you recommend doing it like a summary kind of way, or would it be like a bullet points, just making sure that it does align with the job descriptions as well? The way we have it on the CV, like a bullet points when we have our roles and stuff done. So would you advise it to be like that as well, or just like a summary kind of thing, please?
So if you've had a career break, I mean, where you have the body of the CV where it's talking about your experience, you could have a few bullet points and say, my career break, I was doing this, 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 and this. And that's fine. And it's giving the hiring manager, the recruiter, some insights about what you've been doing in your time. The summary bit should be a lot broader in terms of your skill sets, and not necessarily pointing in on your time out, but it should be just a general overview of who you are. And as I said, in the main body of the CV, where you normally would have, let's say, your career history, and you want to put career break and then have, for example, these are the key things that I was doing. You might have worked on a project, you were doing this, you were volunteering, you were doing that. That feels pretty natural to me.
Okay. All right, cool. I get it now. All right. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, Mariam. Martins, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you, sir. So my question is just so I just want to know, but most times when I apply for jobs and I always even when I go for interviews as well, I'm always thrown this question that what salary range would I want? Like the company which I'm applying for, they would normally ask what salary range would I want. So I don't know if there is a specific if it is right or if it's okay to say maybe a higher, of course that is what I would want, but to say a higher salary, or there's a special, I have to give a range, or I don't know what is the right answer to if I'm being asked that kind of question about this kind of salary I would want them to pay me if I entirely get the job at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. So if you are asked that question in an interview, I think it's important to do a bit of research about what the going rate salary is anyway, so that you can picture yourself as not being too high or too low. So let's say, I don't know, you're a software developer and the average starting salary for somebody who's 2 to 3 years in is £50,000. That's what the research is telling you. Then you could potentially say, I'm looking around the £50,000 region. So when you mention that, it's a bit broader than that. But you can also end it by saying, but I'm open to, talk about the compensation in more detail, because sometimes it's not always about the salary. I know that's what pays the bills, but I think there are other things that form part of your compensation. So it could be the opportunity for bonus, and these are the things that you probably will have further conversations down the line. And so that's why I say to people that, it is best to probably give a range, and let them know, but you're open to, a conversation about it. You're not entirely fixed, so you don't want to close the door. So you might want to say, look, I'm open to, in and around the range of £50,000, but happy to have a further conversation about it. My main thing that's important to me is about the role, and am I able to grow in it, and the projects that I'll be involved in. So it doesn't sound too blunt, as in like, if you don't give me 50 grand, then see you later. You need to kind of show that once you get a bit further down the track, where you do get an actual physical offer, then you can start to play a bit more hardball. But at this stage, if it's at an interview, you want to leave the doors open a bit and have some flexibility.
All right. Thank you so much. But before I come back to you, let me just, for the people online, at the beginning I said the reason for this kind of session is to empower us, load us with different type of information, which, might help us, whether during the interview or at the interview. You never know. Information is power, information is key, and that is why we run this type of a session. So I hope, you've been able to, gain something out of the session today, no matter how little, no matter how small. I believe you've been able to get something out of the session today. And to our guest, Temisan, from myself, from the entire student of Learn with Pride, we want to say a very big thank you to you for honoring our invite. We do really, really appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted in any way. And I'm saying that because I hope if we call on you next time, maybe two months down the line, 3 months down the line, I'm sure maybe you're still going to answer our call, hopefully. But we want to say thank you for taking your time. I know time is precious, especially in this part of the world. But thank you again. We really do appreciate. And, for everyone, if you are new to Learn with Pride, you can go on our website to know about the courses we run, www.learnwithpride.co.uk, or visit any of our Instagram or social media pages, whether Instagram, Facebook, just search for Learn with Pride. And this is where we're going to be ending, today's session. Until we see next time, do stay safe out there. Enjoy your evening. And once again, thanks, Temisan. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye,
Thanks for
everyone.
having me.